So what is a Dark Souls?
What is a man?
Because apparently there are more than one out there. What is it with this immense hype around FromSoftware's now major gaming flagship? Why is it held up as a pinnacle of modern game design? Why is its gamer base so fanatically loyal to defending the experience the game provides? And why is it called the Soulsborne franchise? And why, oh why, do you have to get good? So this video will nearly exclusively talk about the first Dark Souls game, because I want to talk about the cult surrounding the first game released in that series. Dark Souls 2 has become a mixed bag for people, because it supposedly betrayed what made the original a modern classic among video games. And its story, even though I love Dark Souls 2, I have to admit was rather weak compared to the initial spark, and didn't feature the leading hand of former director Hidetaka Miyazaki, who returned as the sculptor of art design and look and feel for Dark Souls 3, which did had signs of fatigue and will probably be the finale to the Dark Souls games. But I have to address Dark Souls' spiritual and intellectual predecessor, Demon Souls. This format is called Mr. Simple for a reason, so as far as I'm concerned, you do not have to know about FromSoftware's previous entries in the gaming market to understand the success of Demon Souls. None of the games prior to Demon Souls' success ever came even close to selling more than 500,000 units. That also had to do with the fact that FromSoftware pretty much exclusively worked with Sony on PlayStation and PlayStation 2 games. With the two leading series, Kingsfield, a first-person action RPG, and Armored Core, a simple third-person mecha shooter, FromSoftware remained a quite unremarkable developer studio from 1994 until 2010. Demon Souls again was exclusively available on Sony's PlayStation 3 only. Like all the other Dark Souls games, it at first appeared to be just another simple third-person hack-and-slash game with light RPG options and a pretty generic medieval setting with undead and demons and such. And it was a gigantic hit for Sony with nearly 2 million copies sold. This was a tremendous hit for FromSoftware, who now could afford to separate themselves from Sony, hence Dark Souls 1 also released on the Xbox 360 under Bandai Namco. So how could this have happened? The studio only had a minuscule following of fans of pretty unknown nerdy game series, so it must have been the game, right? The game must have been so remarkable that it itself could unleash such sales figures and such a huge cult following. So let's see why Demon Souls wasn't your typical generic fantasy tribe. First things first, Demon Souls had a for industry standards completely out of control difficulty curve. If you made just a handful of mistakes, by the way mistakes that anyone new to the game would incidentally make, you would get curb stomped and sent back to the last checkpoint. With a handful of mistakes, I mean like 2 or 3. Don't block in time once, and those bastards might rip you to shreds. If you die, your health bar gets sliced in half until you kill a boss or use a rare, nearly finite item that can only be farmed by killing one specific enemy type pretty late in the game. Upon death, you lose all your souls, the currency in Demon Souls, and you have to reach the exact point you died last time to reclaim them. If you're not able to reach that far on your next try, those souls are forfeit. So that's the basic formula of Demon Souls right there. It lacks basic features like a jump button or that you could sell your equipment. You can't even pause the game for fuck's sake, but people liked it. In an industry where it was ever more prevalent to lend a hand to the new players, FromSoftware curb-stomped that concept and made things different just for the sake of being different. It is impossible to say now if that was made out of spite, intentionally, or out of incompetence, because the narrative now from Miyazaki's side is that it had always been planned as a coordinated challenge for the player. So who is to say? People liked it. And what people liked even more was the online player versus player mentality that would become the conceptionary spine of the whole series. Miyazaki once described an accident he had on a mountaintop and how strangers helped each other to get their cars going again. He wanted to recreate that feeling of being lost and being helped by strangers to set things right again. The servers for the online community of Demon's Souls shut down on February 2018. Let that sink in for a while, please. The servers of an 8-year-old game on a 2017 discontinued console that was replaced by the PlayStation 4 in 2013 were kept alive until 2018. I mean, under normal circumstances, servers last only up to 4 or 5 years max. And that normally in the current console generation. So I would deduce multiplayer online had a huge impact on Demon's Souls' success. People loved the concept that you could either be your enemy's greatest nemesis or you could lend a helping hand to new players. When you were online, you could infiltrate someone's playthrough as a phantom, or you could set yourself up to be summoned as a co-op player on someone's game. This is what kept Demon's Souls alive and made it a legend. What people also fell in love with was Demon's Souls' way to tell a story, in that it didn't, if you didn't want it to. Overall, the story tells of a mighty king who awakened an ancient hive-mind demon to claim its power and nurture its kingdom. The king was assimilated by the demon and his kingdom replaced with an evil copy of him. The kingdom's many religious followers would be in disarray as demons and undead flooded the streets and halls. It's a neat little story and you meet many characters along the way that complement that story, but how deep you dive into conversations and item descriptions is completely up to you. Nothing in Demon's Souls is obvious and to fully understand the story is kinda a reward in and of itself. Cut to 2011. FromSoftware distanced themselves from Sony's exclusivity and worked with Bandai Namco on Dark Souls, so they could bring it to an even wider audience on PS3 and Xbox 360. The problem was that Dark Souls was a very short-sighted project. FromSoftware originally wanted to set up a kind of sequel to Demon's Souls, but was denied the license rights to elements and characters in Demon's Souls by Sony. That's the reason why many characters in Dark Souls are voiced by the same actors in Demon's Souls, with nearly identical personality or occupation in the world.
You came for Demon's Souls? Or to save this land and be remembered as a hero?
Well, what do we have here? You must be a new arrival.
As you can imagine, with Dark Souls being released just a year after Demon's Souls, the production was rushed. Bandai Namco wanted a straight follow-up right on time. We will elaborate a little bit further on this, but it is obvious that Dark Souls looks far worse in general than Demon's Souls ever did in its ugliest parts. The visual downgrade is quite shocking to say the least. The frame rate drop in Blighttown is the most criticized technical issue the Dark Souls community has addressed. So now, let me address some common questions newcomers might ask. I will try to align them chronologically to what happens in the game, and then I will address some broader concepts. When people rave about the brilliant game mechanic in Dark Souls and how it revolutionized the genre and even gaming as a whole, they often refer to the so-called Estus system. The Estus flask is an item that gives you around half to all your health back when used. That depends on how you leveled your health. When you die, you restart at the last checkpoint, the so-called bonfire, and your stock of Estus gets refilled. That's 5 Estus flasks at each bonfire, but you can use a nearly finite consumable called Humanity to strengthen that bonfire and gain 10 Estus flasks each try. Humanity serves many uses, but it is mostly an item to become human again so you can enter online play and summon help. I won't discuss this any further because it would negate the purpose of this essay. Estus is thus a clever strategic component. Demon Souls still had normal consumable and buyable healing items, where Dark Souls has none. This game is completely designed around the limited amount of Estus you have and the possibility to sacrifice humanity to make it a little bit easier for you. The other ingenious component is the possibility to overheal. Are you really sure you want to use one of your precious Estus flasks now? That the last attack took only a third of your health? Maybe the next strike won't kill you. And then you could heal that too, with the same flask. Or maybe the next strike hits even harder and you will regret that you didn't use the Estus right now. This is the genius behind the Estus system, my friends. The next thing is the 3 ways you are able to confront an upcoming attack, which were featured in Demon Souls before and share a genius risk-reward system. First, you can block an attack, but that costs most of your stamina. But you run very low risk of getting damaged. The second tier is dodging an attack. The timing is essential here, otherwise you get hit. But this costs far less stamina than blocking. And the third tier is parrying the attack. The timing must be so precise, you could speak of a tenth of a second, but it costs next to no stamina and deals massive damage to the opponent. This array of defensivity, if I might call it so, is the absolute backbone of Dark Souls' fighting system. This is complemented by the other 4 options you have to attack. You either swing with one hand quickly or hard, or with 2 hands quickly or hard, which deals more damage, but with 2 hands you play a riskier game because you are basically unable to properly block in this state. So why is Demon Souls notorious for overwhelming newcomers? Well, you could say this is because of the first boss. He's big and frightening on purpose, so people will at first be shying away from fighting it. But then the game tells you directly, no, you do have to fight this thing. But to be honest, that's not the reason really. The reason is the then following starting area. From here it is not clear where to go next, and you could find yourself wandering to end level areas with at the time unkillable skeletons at the graveyard or ghosts down in New Londo. The third way up the castle is the right one, but pretty much off the side. So this ambiguity is what grinds people's gears. Why this controversy about the dragon killing you on the bridge? After you defeated the second boss on the crenellations and you met Solaire, you will all likely be pretty exhausted by now. Especially first time players will scream for the next bonfire to appear, but it won't. The next bonfire would be the one you started from, which is a nice little moment for sure. But to get to the bonfire and save all your souls, you must cross the bridge and turn right, here. But if you do this, a dragon flies over your head and instantly kills you. Can you avoid this? Yes. Can you avoid this the first time, playing without knowing the trick beforehand? No. So why is this? Why so much meaniness? Because the developers wanted to show you that some enemies reset upon your respawn at the bonfire and some don't. The dragon won't fly over your head the next time you come here. He will sit at the other end of the bridge now. Is this really clever to show off your game mechanics? Sure. Is it unfair as all hell? Sure. What's up with the Capra Demon? The Capra Demon is a way mean players use to troll newcomers who express their exasperation the game would be too hard. Trolls will use this opportunity to mention how easy the Capra Demon is. Like he's the easiest boss in the game, dude. Why this is trolling is that the Capra Demon is another example for how unfinished this game is. The Capra Demon is without a doubt one of the hardest bosses in Dark Souls because of its bullshit implementation. First off, the boss is in your face under 3 seconds or so. You enter the fog gate, you get crushed. If you are able to evade that, for absolutely no reason, there are 2 dogs with him that will maul you if you try to evade his attack. For the longest time it was discussed if the dogs were unintentionally forgotten here, because when you enter this area after the boss got defeated, they respawn. The narrow space in which you fight 3 hard-hitting, hard-to-evade enemies is ludicrous and nearly a bad joke. Interestingly, you can throw bombs through the open roof and kill the boss without even entering its room. This all indeed is a
shameful display!
I am cursed! What to do? Getting cursed by the basilisks in the depth is an old relic they ported and modified from Demon Souls. Remember how you lost half your health in that game when undead? Yeah, getting cursed in Dark Souls is pretty much the same thing, but the only option available to you is seeking a vendor who can cure you, and that's the next thing that's excruciating to many people, me included. You cannot fast travel anymore in this game, at least not in the beginning. That means you have to backtrack enemy-filled lengths of ways to get back to that one stupid NPC character you need for this one specific thing you wanna do, and then get back and then get cursed immediately again. That's no fun. That's no fun at all. Blighttown. Yeah, Blighttown is not only notorious for its framerate drops, it is also feared by newcomers. What's the reason? Well, it's twofold. First, there is only one bonfire, and it's not even at the halfway point, it's like 1/3 in or so. And you will die a lot in this area. There are, I believe, 4 of those dudes until you reach the swamp. They will practically immediately poison you, and if you don't have any other countermeasures, you're going to die, because Toxic eats through up to 8 of your Estus flasks. The Toxic snipers are such bullshit that FromSoftware nerfed them down to being a non-respawning enemy. Once you kill one, he never returns. Now, there are 2 areas in between the next big features of the Dark Souls hype and controversy I will not focus on. The fight against Quelaag, which is pretty great, and Sans Fortress, which is just hard as balls and as challenging, quote unquote, as it can get. And next up is Anor Londo, your big visual spectacle reward for enduring this game up until this point. Like other areas, this one is pretty unfinished. It is vast and deserted for the most part, and just a hollow stage all around, if you would excuse the pun. But it is gorgeous and features some interesting and challenging enemies, like those flying dudes who can fly. Because they didn't have the time to program that in, I guess. Yep, to call the stage unfinished would be an understatement. The biggest challenge you will face around here are the 2 archers you have to run up to and then realize that you have to fight one of them on a narrow ledge you cannot squeeze around him. It sounds bogus, but I will give the game the benefit of the doubt here and say they really wanted you to learn here how to parry. Hence you cannot step around them and backstab them. What is the epitome of Dark Souls though is the boss battle of Anor Londo, Ornstein and Smough. Why is it so infamous? Oh, maybe because schmucks like me tried for 3 hours to beat those guys on their own, refusing to summon a helping phantom NPC and axe those guys off first try, which I did then. For 3 hours I couldn't even finish one of them off, and with a NPC phantom I grounded those motherfuckers first try. Those are some freaking balancing issues right there, man. Ornstein and Smough are so notorious because of how this game handles your enemies' hitboxes. It is entirely possible that one of your attacks bounces back off walls, but your enemies can not only slash through walls without hindrance, they can hit through each other. Which turns the fight with those 2 to an elongated waiting game until both of them exhaust their attack pool at the same time and you can safely land a hit. Now, finally, you are able to walk between bonfires, because the remaining 4 areas are long, linear ways, and for change, the developers wanted to cut you some slack here apparently. Those remaining 4 areas are considered as the absolute weak point of the Dark Souls experience, even by hardcore fans. And I couldn't disagree more. I regard the Duke's Archive as one of the most lavish, visually and conceptually interesting areas in the whole game. The following crystal caves are a visually interesting concept, but only amount to an elongated challenge room of sorts. New Londo is a flooded ruin level you have to use an item for to make the incoming enemies vulnerable. The item eventually running out of time sounds annoying as fuck, is pretty much rendered trivial cause it lasts minutes upon minutes. It's a concept they just build in to scare players away from entering the area too early. I think this area is mostly annoying and confusing. The ghosts who can spawn through walls don't make this any more compelling. The Dark Souls community is pretty much indifferent to this area, I guess. People absolutely hate the Demon Ruins and Lost Isolith because of their completely linear and flat nature. I, on the other hand, love how straightforward those levels can be. I have to admit, there is one bullshit boss I could never beat without using an exploit glitch and arrows, but what people despise the most is the final boss of this area, the Bed of Chaos. Bed of Chaos is, unlike any other boss in the game, a puzzle boss. You have to maneuver between gaps and roll through its attacks to destroy 2 shackles. Though I have to say, there are different methods possible, and I for once always snipe those things. You then have to weave through a last onslaught of attacks and have to strike the boss's weak point after landing a rather difficult jump. People mostly hate this boss because of its attacks nearly all being one-hit kills or instant deaths. I myself don't see that much difference to bosses who can kill you with 2 hits instead of 1, so moving on. The last area, the Tomb of Giants, is where I gave up. I missed to collect a crucial item in Lost Isolith to traverse this area, and I just wasn't willing to go through all of this again, just to see the last 10th or so of the game. The Tomb of Giants is an area so dark you cannot see enemies mere meters away from you. It is the cheapest, most artificial difficulty spike the game has, and is utter bullshit all around. Oh, can't make the area more challenging anymore? Well, how about we eliminate the most important part of video gaming, being able to see things. Fuck this shit. No other part in Dark Souls enraged me like this bullshit. So maybe you've also heard of the semi-interactive story and the overall plot Dark Souls has. Ironically, many of that kicks in just some hours before the final boss. See, this whole story about a king burning himself to keep the world afloat and undead running wild is nothing special. The game gains its special status in storytelling because many, if not most characters flat out lie to you. Guinevere in Anor Londo is just an illusion to trick you into taking the king's place as fuel for the fire. The primordial serpent Fromt is in on this whole spiel, and it is speculated they are just luring in potential candidates to renew the futile cycle of undead life. The primordial serpent Carthy, on the other hand, imprints the idea on you to let everything crumble and build a new world upon the ashes. This references how Lord Gwyn, the Burning King, stripped humanity of its rightful place in history and cursed them with the dark sign, destining them to become hollows upon death. So now that you all know that, how do you get started? How do you get good? And why are so many people saying you have to? This meme originated in the fact that countless people were so frustrated with Dark Souls in the first hours of the game that they quit multiple times, threw the controller around and outed themselves online how the game broke them and they just couldn't handle it anymore. And then the elite of Dark Souls players would tell them to just get good at the game. Just play this abusively hard game just 10 more hours and you will eventually get better. Just read through books of walkthroughs to understand the core mechanics of the game. The game itself won't even have the kindness of telling you, like pressing the roll evade button while running to let you jump. Yes, you have to Google how to fucking jump in Dark Souls. They will tell you that all the grief and all the frustration is worth it, because in the end you get some sweet old Guinevere boobies, I guess. What this community doesn't seem to understand is that this mentality is typical victim behavior. No, those newcomers have to go through the same shit I had to go through. Why? Because it made me a great gamer. It made me the elite. And all the others better have to meet the same standards, damn it. But all these hours you spent in Dark Souls, they didn't make you an elite gamer. First and foremost, it made you a victim. The victim of a mean-spirited and annoying game experience. And that's how you cope with it. By telling yourself it made you into something special. Because you can't bear the thought it made you into the laughingstock of FromSoftware. Like they literally leave a message in front of a booby trap you can fall into, that it's safe to cross here. Yes, I know we are dealing with the unreliable narrator trope here, but this is fucking ridiculous. So how do people cope with the abusive trial and error mentality of the game? They have to repeat to themselves like a mantra that everything in the game is fair. And that leads to the next question newcomers might have. Why do people get so religiously pissed when you even hint at the possibility that the game might not be fair in some instances? That's why. Because if it wasn't fair, they couldn't brag about the challenge they had overcome. They would have to admit to themselves that they oftentimes just manipulated a pretty buggy engine. And they would oftentimes have to realize that the programmers obviously weren't really sure themselves what experience they wanted to provide for the player. Some instances on that for you. In Anno Londo, in my opinion, it is pretty reasonable to let the players figure out for themselves that they are expected to summon a NPC phantom or a friend who helps with Ornstein and Smo. What is absolutely unreasonable are the two giant knights and the archer you have to defeat every time to even get unhindered to the summoning spot. Not to speak of the limited times you only have to try this with a summon because every phantom uses up a humanity. So your immediate incentive is to try it a million times alone. Completely fruitless, of course, and then you have so much rocky montage training and you're so fucking pissed that you give in and summon the damn phantom and you will win against those two fuckers first fucking time. Because with a phantom, this is the easiest shit in the world all of a sudden. So if it was so prevalent to the learning experience to summon a phantom here, why locate it at the butt of the world to reach in the first place? The other example should be the two archers at the crosswalk. Previously, I just brushed those two away with the game wanting you to parry them, and that's it. But this is a major difficulty spike for most gamers, for me too. So I just lured one of those fuckers with me, and because the AI is completely brain dead, it plunges into the abyss every time because it wants to follow me without regards to the environment. I have no words for this. So, in the end, I would deduce that Dark Souls is an outstanding experience nearly no other game will ever provide you. The problem is, many of that is due to its ridiculous trial and error mentality, its idea of challenging difficulty, which oftentimes is just an annoyance, and the very split community. Should you play it? I think you should. Should you feel ashamed if you quit after just a few minutes and never wanna play it again? I don't think so.